As recently as a few days ago, our government funding discussions seem to be in a pretty good place. Bipartisan, bicameral negotiations on finishing out the year's appropriations process seem to be right on track. We appeared headed toward a compromise result that would have provided much-needed investments in border security and completed our remaining appropriation bills to fully fund the government. Last week, the Democratic leader seemed confident that, quote, we worked out a plan to refund the government, deal with border security in a way that would be acceptable to all sides. That's working pretty well, he said. Just this past Friday, the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Leahy, suggested, quote, we're 95 to 98% done. But then over the weekend, we heard that the talks had suddenly hit a snag. The bipartisan momentum had stalled. What went wrong? What went wrong? Well, Mr. President, here's what happened. House Democrats decided to add a poison pill demand into the conversations at the 11th hour. It's a new demand. It's really extreme. A hard statutory cap on the number of illegal immigrants who could be detained by the federal government. A hard statutory cap on how many illegal immigrants could be detained by the federal government. This would result in the release of thousands of criminal aliens and our inability to detain thousands more criminal aliens whom our federal and state law enforcement authorities will apprehend. This is a poison pill that no administration, not this one, not the previous one, would or should ever accept. Imagine the absurdity of this. House Democrats want to set a limit on how many criminal aliens our government can detain. The limit's not based on any aspect of reality, such as how many criminal aliens there actually are, or what crimes they've committed. Just an arbitrary number a couple of lawmakers have pulled out of thin air. The consequence of such an arbitrary limit is obvious. Thousands of criminal aliens would simply be released into the interior of our country, both immediately and then on a rolling basis into the future. The National Sheriff's Association explained this in a letter to Chairman Shelby and Senator Leahy, and here's what the sheriffs had to say. Capping the number of detention beds not only jeopardizes the integrity of the immigration system, but would cripple ICE's ability to detain criminal aliens and other aliens who pose a risk to public safety or are a flight risk. In order to meet the cap being tentatively proposed by Congress, ICE would be compelled to release thousands of aliens from custody. That's what the National Sheriff's Association had to say about it. Released, just like that, right out into the United States of America. So it's hard to believe, Mr. President, that this is where some Democrats are. A get-out-of-jail-free card for criminals because the radical left doesn't like U.S. immigrations and customs enforcement. Let me say that again. A get-out-of-jail-free card for criminals because the radical left doesn't like U.S. immigrations and customs enforcement. It's hard to believe the abolish ICE fringe among House Democrats actually thinks enforcing our laws is wrong. It's hard to believe a group of House Democrats see kneecapping American law enforcement as a higher priority than keeping the government open. But it would be even harder to believe that leading Democrats would be open to this craziness It's craziness. And would let this last-minute poison pill scuttle the entire appropriations process. Just last year, when the Democratic leader was highlighting productive bipartisan work on this appropriations process, he said, quote, "Both sides have worked to avoid poison pill riders. That has meant steady progress." Ranking Member Leahy celebrated that through last year's committee process, quote, "We avoided new poison pill riders." So look, Mr. President, I hope that my Democratic colleagues are able to talk some sense into their side. Some House Democrats are risking a second partial government shutdown by calling for this absurd last-minute poison pill. No administration of any party would sign a bill that forced them to release criminal aliens into the interior of the United States. No administration would accept this poison pill forcing the release of criminals now and on a rolling basis going forward. I understand the four leaders on appropriations in both chambers will be meeting in just a few minutes. I would implore my friends across the aisle, untangle yourselves from the most extreme far-left voices out on the fringe. Do not let this radical fringe and its absurd demand prevent you from taking yes for an answer. Don't let them torpedo all of this bipartisan work. This provision would rightly be a total non-starter with the White House, with any White House, not just this one. It would erase our progress and kick us back to square one. A total poison pill, pure and simple. Look, the American people are not clamoring for more aliens with criminal backgrounds to be roaming at large in their communities. Never heard anybody ask for that. And they certainly are not eager for that outcome, so eager for that outcome that they want another partial shutdown in order to achieve it. My Democratic colleagues in this chamber need to see this stunt. A stunt. They need to see it for just what it is. Bring their side back to the table and finish our work for the American people.
Senator Lindsey Graham. And Senator, I want to reiterate that we just broke news on this program, top of the show, that the Democrats are now saying that border wall funding in exchange for money for a wall must include limits on the number of ICE detention beds. You don't think the president will sign such a bill?
Oh, no, he can't sign such a bill. Now, I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but I think that's the impasse we have. They're willing to give the president a little more money for the wall, but in return, they want to limit the number of bed spaces available to house violent criminals. This goes back to AOC's belief that ICE should be abolished. So the bottom line is, how can you get money for a wall and at the same time limit bed spaces for violent offenders and say you've solved the immigration problem? You're actually incentivizing more illegal immigration by reducing the bed space, and it undercuts any money you would get for a wall. He can't sign that bill. If that's the friction point, then we'll have a continuing resolution and we'll just keep talking.
Congressman Mark Walker, Vice Chairman of the House Republican Conference and member of the Homeland Security Committee. Sir, how are you? And welcome back to America's Newsroom. You're just listening to the reporting. What do you want to add on that, sir?
Well, the timing couldn't be more perfect. I just finished meeting with 50 different sheriffs who actually got the call last night. They brought these letters here specifically talking about the detention bed problem, the 16,500. If that is reduced, according to their numbers, 72% of current detention heldees here, the population, is subject to mandatory crimes because of this, having certain convictions or having committed certain acts. They have a huge problem with that. These were sheriffs from Massachusetts, several border sheriffs, really compelled me to be able to come out and talk about something that's happening in real time. They came from all parts of the country. They're here today to present these letters to this committee to make sure that we do not reduce these detention beds.
Why do you believe the Democrats want to do that?
It's hard for me to judge motive. I don't know if this just is another posturing move, but I believe this is crucial. The fact that you're wanting to release people who've committed violent crimes, I don't know that I can sit here and tell you that their motive is evil, but I will tell you this, it certainly doesn't make sense, not just to from a partisan perspective, but to people across this country. Many of the stories I heard this morning, this is definitely a non-starter for us to try to negotiate with.
They don't trust ICE, right? I mean, that's part of this, and some of them have decided to get rid of it.
Well, yeah, these are the same people that have arrested over 4,000 MS-13 gang members. These are the same people that just in 2017 alone rescued 906 children who are being exploited. These people are law enforcement. They work arm in arm with our local sheriffs throughout the country. This has become a political talking point, and the reason that members of Congress and others are so frustrated is because we have human lives at stake.
Gavin Newsom, Democratic governor of California, suggests that he will pull 400 National Guard troops off the southern border in his state. I think New Mexico did that not too long ago. What do you think of that?
Well, maybe that's proof that the border wall in San Diego is actually working. I hope it's not just from a political posturing standpoint. We need not only men and women there, armed agents, but we also need to make sure that we continue to expand the technological aspects. I can't speak to specifically why he's doing that. My first impact is it's another move that makes it look like the border is not as dangerous as it in reality, as I've heard from these sheriffs, that it actually is.
Well, there's going to be another meeting this afternoon. 4 members of the House, 4 members of the Senate. We'll see if they move the ball forward. Meantime, you got a midnight deadline, right? Friday night. If not, are we looking at another government shutdown?
I don't know, outside of 1 or 2 knuckleheads from around here that enjoy that particular the shutdown atmosphere. I think it's bad for the American people. I hope we don't have to go there. But I think the president used the term, this is crazy. I couldn't agree more with the president. This is absolutely crazy. We have to keep that on the table to hopefully find some kind of results that benefits the American people the best.
Sounds like they want to negotiate on the beds, right? You put a number down and you see how much you're willing to match them. Sir, you lost a legend in North Carolina politics, Walter Jones, over the weekend, 3rd District, Eastern North Carolina. How do you remember him?
Well, as part of our North Carolina delegation, I remember him as an honest man. It sounds simple, but I will tell you, in Washington, D.C., sometimes that comes in rare commodity when someone will look you in the eye, no matter really what you think about it, and tell you what he thinks best for the constituents, the North Carolinians that he represented. That was his reputation. It was his father's reputation. They almost served back-to-back from 1966, I believe, so both father and son, and he dedicated his life to public service. We have great fondness for him, but he will go down in this House with a legacy of someone who was willing to tell the truth.
Walter Jones was 76, passed away in hospice on his 76th birthday. Thank you, sir. Mark Walker from North Carolina.
Thanks, Bill.